on advertising. I'm Steve Etzler with Business Development Institute. BDI, established in New York City in 2001, produces thought leadership programs on the latest trends, issues, and opportunities facing marketers and communicators. I would like to thank our speaker, Jeff Soriano, Director of Demand Generation for Social Flow, our moderator, Jess Barr, Senior Client Strategist for Social Flow, and our panelists, Sean Corcoran, Senior Vice President, Director of Digital Media and Social Influence for Mullen, Paul Dene, Financial Services Marketing Leader for PwC, and Andrew Foxwell, Co-Founder and CEO, Foxwell Digital. I would also like to thank our sponsor, Social Flow, for making this webinar possible, and of course, a big thank you to you, our attendees, for investing your valuable time with us. We have a very simple agenda. The webinar will run for 60 minutes. The first 15 minutes will consist of a presentation from Jeff Soriano at Social Flow. The next part will be a moderated panel discussion. Jess Barr from Social Flow will be the moderator. Sean, Paul, and Andrew will be the panelists. The last portion of the webinar will be a moderated Q&A session with you, the audience. We strongly encourage your questions, so please submit them through the GoToWebinar platform. For those of you on Twitter, please use the hashtag #BDI1. That's pound, B as in Boyd, D as in David, I as in Ivan, the number 1, so we may all follow the conversation online. The webinar is being recorded. We will make the recording available after the event. So with that, let's begin. Jeff?
Hey, thanks, Steve. Really appreciate it. Just bringing up my screen now. All right, great. So, as Steve mentioned, I'm Jeff Soriano. I'm the Director of Demand Generation here at Social Flow. I want to thank everybody for joining us today at our virtual roundtable event. We think social is an amazing and unique channel. The pace of change requires social pros like ourselves to constantly be monitoring what is going on in the social sphere. This makes our jobs a little more fun, a little bit exciting, a little bit crazy, but that rapid change is both the challenge and the opportunity. And that's why we're so excited about this topic and our panel. The evolution of social has impacted so many things, but probably none more than advertising. So if we take a look at this timeline, you can see that the social landscape is a little bit like the internet boom. As soon as it took off, a whole slew of networks popped up. But only a few were strong enough and truly relevant enough to really last. But contrary to the decline in the number of social networks, the massive growth and adoption of a few staple networks like our Facebooks and our Twitters, it really demonstrated that social was not a fad, making it probably if not the #1 priority for a large amount of marketers and publishers. The impact of this massive spike in adoption is a topic that TechCrunch has talked a lot about, and we here at Social Flow have a very similar opinion on this. As people add more friends, they follow more people, they like more brands, they're following more publishers and periodicals, the amount of content in their feed just continues to increase and increase and increase. But the time they have to digest that content, well, that remains relatively the same. So, it's just disproportionate in regards to how much content coming in and how much they can digest. So if you think about the competition for your audience's attention, you can see that getting it, and I'm sure you already know this, is a bit of a challenge. The inevitable truth is that this content explosion that has occurred in these social networks has ultimately caused the decline in organic reach. The massive push of stories, ads, videos, all of this content, it's natural that it has made it more difficult for everyone's messages to be seen. I'd say in addition to that, certain platforms, specifically Facebook, has made the decision to develop their own technology, their algorithm, EdgeRank, to ensure that what they deem as quality content is what gets preferential treatment. So, that reach, that visibility. And from what we can see or how we perceive it, that preferential treatment, it seemingly seems to punish brands and retailers while supporting media and publishing organizations. So to that point, we've all been hearing about this decline, if not death, of organic reach. So we decided to do some research of our own to determine if this death of organic was real. So we went back and analyzed over 2 million posts on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn. And what we discovered is that organic reach is definitely not dead for everyone. 10% of the content that is published via social networks makes up 82% of the reach. I'm going to say that one more time. 10% of the content that is published makes up 82% of the reach. That's a pretty substantial number. And if you look at this, those, on average, those top performing posts reach about 850,000 people, and 9 out of the 10 of those posts are from media and entertainment companies. So that led us to ask the question of, what is the impact of this reach ultimately on engagement? And if you're looking at this diagram, I know it can be slightly confusing, so let me take a moment to explain it here. The pink dots represent that top performing content, which also happen to drive the top level engagement. So again, that top 10% of the posts that achieved the most reach also delivered 80% of the engagement. And I don't really think that's a big surprise that something that got much more reach would also drive that much more engagement. But I think it's important to note. And again, no surprise here, based on the early statistics, 87% of that engagement was from content that media and entertainment companies published. So perhaps organic reach isn't dead for everyone, but it raises the question, what should the rest of us do? I mean, you certainly cannot ignore one of the largest channels and ultimately one of the largest opportunities for your business. Well, our answer here at SocialFlow is relatively simple. I want you to think about social like television. Really popular TV shows reach really large audiences. Advertisers review which of these shows have the ability to hit their target audiences and therefore make the decision of which programs they want to actually run advertisements during. And something I want to just kind of bring out or make a point of is that the content of the show doesn't always, if really ever, completely align with the advertisement. Consider a show like Breaking Bad. I'm sure none of us are trying to sell meth, but the show's popularity made it a really great venue for advertisers to reach their audiences. And we were really measuring the success of this or the potential of this, this platform based on viewership. So if we go back to that graph that I showed about the popular social posts, that had a lot of reach and had a lot of engagement, let's think about these like really popular television shows. So if In Style is a popular television show, let's say, that reaches women between 18 and 54, and maybe you're Maybelline, who's trying to reach that same audience, why not leverage In Style's ability to do so? You're aligning your brand with the content and the audience that is really interesting. So if you take a look at this, as marketers, you don't necessarily need to create or spend a ton of time generating all this content. What you could do is actually sponsor the content that is already getting significantly better reach and is already hitting your target audience. So if you just take a look at that again, what we're saying is that audience is there. These publications are getting really strong reach and engagement on social channels. You should be able to leverage that in order to hit your target market. So to kind of summarize all of this, there's been a really massive growth and adoption of social, and that's fantastic because it's an amazing channel, but it's also naturally created that decline in organic reach. But with that said, organic is still alive and well for certain verticals, and I don't think that we can just kind of put together this generalized statement that organic reach is completely dead, because as we saw in the research, it most certainly is not. And brand and retailers really need to amplify and diversify their social strategies. If they want to reach their target audiences, they really need to start to think about not just a singular way to do that, but leveraging social in a multitude of ways to actually get that reach. And lastly, brand and retailers can both, I just went to that point, sorry. But lastly, this is a whole new area for publishers and a new way for them to monetize their social channels by taking advantage of their ability to create this amazing content that, they've proven that people want to consume. Take that great content and allow the brands, the retailers, let them sponsor it. This is a great way to find a new revenue stream for the publications and support that great content that's really out there. I think that I have kind of said enough here, and I don't want to take up too much more of the time because I think the panel is going to be really awesome. So I think I've made some points that some people in our panel probably want to weigh in on, and so this is the point where I'm actually going to hand it off to Jess, who is our senior client strategist. So Jess, I am going to give you the floor.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. So kicking it off, let's start with Paul. Do you think that it is a good practice for Facebook to use this algorithm that gives preferential reach and visibility to content that they're defining as quality versus other platforms where it's really a level playing field when a brand puts out a post?
Sure. So as the author of Facebook Marketing for Dummies, I just feel like we should set a little context here with EdgeRank, the algorithm and stuff. So for those listeners on the phone, the EdgeRank algorithm is the secret sauce that Facebook uses to determine, which articles should be displayed and which shouldn't. It really depends on three different attributes. That is user affinity, so how close are you to the individual? The weight of the content, is it getting a lot of action on Facebook? And time decay, so has it been around for a while? So freshness dating, if you will. And my assumption is they're putting more weight on advertisers' content, right? It makes sense. They're a public company. They have shareholders to report. By the way, it's hit a new high today for those of you that own the stock and follow the stock. And it's no longer about how cool or viral your content is. It's like, are you buying ads or not is the basic question. So I tried to game the system a little bit just on my own behalf, buying ads at just a minimal level of like $1 a day, which is really the minimum you can do, just to see if that changed my results from a reach perspective. And I'll spare you the gory details, but the short answer is no, right? So the question is, to what extent do you need to be an advertiser in order to get your content, more highly ranked in EdgeRank? So, is it fair? Is it right? I don't know. It is what it is, and that's what's going on currently. So I don't know if any of the other panelists have a thought on that, or maybe I'll pass it back to you, Jess.
So do you think that Facebook is putting more preference towards advertisers versus brands that are just sharing content without doing any paid strategy behind it?
I mean, I think they're favoring advertisers. They have to, right? To what extent you're an advertiser is really the question I was trying to solve using my own research, and clearly I didn't necessarily crack the code on that. But I can definitely tell you with the pages that I manage that what used to get, 1,000 or a couple thousand hits are getting maybe 1,000, maybe a couple hundred, right? So it's just not there. Maybe my content isn't good. I mean, there's tons of things that are factors involved in this. But it just feels like, and maybe this is a little bit more subjective, it just feels like it's not getting the distribution that it used to.
So Andrew, are you seeing this with your clients, or how is this impacting your strategy?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting actually to look at this. I believe pretty strongly that things should go really well when you produce quality content. My dog's flipping out, so I'm going to get off and let somebody else finish.
Sean, have you seen this with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, we we manage both organic Facebook pages, and we handle a lot of the paid media for several clients. And there's no doubt that obviously the organic side's gone down. And actually, it's kind of part of my answer to the third question, but I will jump in a little bit and preview a little bit by saying that we've definitely shifted our approach overall because, on one hand, we put out more advertising-focused content, which is most of our brand content. It's definitely getting preferential treatment, I think, overall.
So would you agree that the decline of organic reach has definitely changed your social strategy?
Yeah, I mean, we have shifted overall from what I would say, and I was part of this when I was at Forrester talking about brand as a publisher, and I think what happened there was, organic reach, you spent so much time building up communities across different platforms, and Facebook being the primary one, that what you were basically doing was saying, okay, I've now, and you pay for a lot of it, I now have almost a CRM kind of approach to the world, or that advocate base that I can be talking to on a regular basis. And to be perfectly honest, I think a lot of people felt like the rug was kind of pulled out from under them on that, with organic reach being so low over time, and whether that's Facebook's fault or not is regardless of that, you had to kind of shift an approach. And I think what a lot of people fell in a trap of also during that time period was, we're going to fill out a content calendar. And I think you had, frankly, some junior people on the social media side of the world that were so focused on filling out a content calendar, they almost forget about what they're trying to accomplish. So our shift has been, let's not think about that anymore. Let's start to think about, how we can create less quality content over time that's going to really be content, we call it content people care about, that probably matches a little bit more what Jeff kind of described earlier, what media organizations are doing, minus the clickbait, which I think is a lot of it. But and then on the flip side of that, saying, okay, how do we get much smarter? And I think the tools have evolved because of what Facebook and to some degree some of the other platforms have done on the paid side to help us amplify that. So I think you're definitely seeing a shift from I guess that time period of build big community and have a big content calendar and publish all the time to let's be really smart about how this fits into our larger strategy. Only publish really great content that we think is really truly going to break through with a large group, and then amplify what we need to with the paid side using the right tools.
Cool. So Andrew, if you're able to answer this one, do you believe that it's no longer a matter of are you advertising on social, but the conversation's changing to how are you advertising on social?
Yeah, I do think that it has shifted towards that. How are you doing it? You can't be a brand out there today and not be putting a few dollars behind things and, be actually having a strategy of how you're going to do that. If you're going to spend the time to create that quality content and to put time and attention into the way that you talk about that and the stories you're telling, then you absolutely need to have some sort of a small advertising budget to make sure that it reaches it. It's kind of your due diligence and credibility that you need to provide to the people that went through that and created that content. So if you have an operation, I have a number of publishers as clients, and I've known a lot of them that haven't actually, they're just dipping their toe in the water on paid social, and specifically paid Facebook. And they have a staff of 8 writers, and I'm like, if you're not putting dollars behind this, it's disadvantaging them in the long run because you have an opportunity to make a lot more money as well and get a lot more traffic and bring it there. My answer to finish up on the first question before the dog started flipping out was is it good practice? Just like really quickly on this, to provide that preferential treatment, I think they have to, right? Facebook's goal ultimately all the time is to make sure that they bring all their users the most valuable content at all times. That's their kind of duty, I would say, to us as those that use it, and a lot of that does come from publishers. And so is it good practice and is it fair? I think it absolutely is fair because it forces all of us to be better. It forces all of us that advertise, all of us that are marketers, to raise the level of the type of thing that we're putting out, which ultimately makes the platform better and makes the user experience better too.
Interesting. So, Paul, do you think that there are other networks that are big opportunities for social advertising now?
Well, for me, and so let me give you a little bit of context, just so the audience can follow through. So, looking at your question too here regarding, is social advertising, mandatory now? For a professional services firm like a PwC, where content is really sort of the first taste maybe that a company might have of us, and we need to get our thought leaders out there. I mean, we depend on content. So I think Andrew mentioned publishers, and to a certain extent, when Andrew said that, I almost thought, like, who isn't a publisher these days, right? You almost have to be a publisher. So in my role in marketing here at PwC, it's very important that we get our content out there, and it's about accelerating that distribution. So yes, if social will give me an additional boost, then absolutely I would be happy to do that. And I think it's mandatory now, especially if the topic is like time sensitive, or let's say the content is, let's say, super important to the company that we need to get it out, then of course we'd want to do that. So then opportunities within networks for us, the network of choice, while Facebook is great, LinkedIn has been a serious player for us, and we've been pushing the boundaries using LinkedIn ads, targeting specific companies, targeting titles. It's just a little bit more of a business conversation than a social conversation that's happening in Facebook. And yes, it's more expensive, and of course it's hard for me to say that being the author of Facebook Marketing for Dummies, but it's more expensive than Facebook, and but the results are more relevant, we've noticed. And so we've been diverting dollars into the LinkedIn network and creating content that's going to flow there very well. And of course we're using Twitter and Facebook to round it out. But that's really where we're seeing the biggest opportunities, at least for us.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Hey, Sean, I know we touched on this a little bit before, but I'm wondering, outside of content, how is the decrease in organic reach impacting your advertising strategy?
Well, I mean, I think it is almost kind of a good news side of it. If there is a good news side of it, really is the fact that I think there's been a lot of an evolution in the paid side of social advertising. I think Facebook's done a lot better in terms of the tools they've offered, made, I think, the content in terms of the actual ads themselves a little bit more, I guess, native, if you would call that, so a little bit more of a seamless experience. I think Twitter is really starting to open up a lot of what they're trying to accomplish in terms of putting video into their platform and really bring brands into that, and Snapchat's starting to really open up to advertisers. I think they're all recognizing, I think Facebook going public, is, I think it was Paul that mentioned that, really kind of broke the floodgates in terms of opportunities with advertising. So I think if you do it right, you can do it really well, and that's what's shifted for us, is that there's been a lot more spending in that space. It makes a lot of sense if you have a lot of media that you're planning on buying to be looking to the social space, because it's look at the front screen of anyone's phone, and that's pretty much the prime real estate and the best prime real estate of any advertising today. So I think you really have this opportunity to put great advertising in front of people, and I think it also if the metrics are around sharing and engagement and those types of things are driving it versus that viewership that Jeff talked about earlier with TV. You're almost hoping that it's going to force advertisers to make better content to go down the road. So I think there are some positives there that helped us, and it also has forced the hand, I think, of the advertising world to shift in terms of and adapt in terms of what it's doing.
So you mentioned a little bit about native. Andrew, I'd love to hear your take. How do you think native is playing a role in all of this?
Well, I think native is playing a huge role. You want to see what people are coming up with and the types of things that the community is bringing to it. But more actually, I would love to talk about kind of the networks themselves and the opportunities that each of them hold. I think it all depends for you as the marketers that are listening to this, what the DNA is of your business and what the DNA is of your customer segments, and then combine that with your business goals. It doesn't have to be like we put this piece of content on all three networks. It can be, this really works for Twitter for us. This really works for our segment there. And this really works for LinkedIn. And people, I think, ask me that question all the time. Which one's better? What should I do? And they have varying costs, and they also, obviously serve ads very differently. But I think what it comes down to is when you do go there are opportunities absolutely in LinkedIn, like Paul was talking about, that are fantastic, I think. They are more expensive, but it depends on how you set your expectations around that and how you say, okay, I'm going to go to LinkedIn, but my expectation is that I'm going to pay $7 a click, but that's going to be a very quality click. And that's what I found coming from that platform. And the same thing with LinkedIn, or excuse me, the same thing with Twitter. Facebook is a rapid response. You can get a lot. There's so much inventory there, and Twitter just lives as a different thing. So if you set your expectations differently, they can all serve an absolute purpose in your business. So to answer your question with a different question, with a different point, I just wanted to give my thoughts out on that.
Cool. So Paul, you had mentioned LinkedIn a little earlier. How are you seeing this impacting your advertising strategy?
Well, so sort of as you say here, like has the decline or the death of organic changed the social strategy? It absolutely has, right? So what that means is that we've had to, pay to be heard, as you would imagine. So it's a cut in ad dollars. It has to come from some direction. I mean, they're not growing a lot of new dollars, right? So it means we have to slice things like our PPC budget, right? So what we're spending on Google ads goes a little bit more towards social now. But more importantly, it means that my SEO budget has to be top-notch, right? We have to be squeezing that budget to get the most we can because I can't, let's say, Band-Aid by buying just PPC. So my SEO better be awesome if I'm going to cut that budget and put that down on either more LinkedIn or more Twitter or Facebook. And we're using really soft dollars to try to improve our SEO, right? I've got an individual on the team that's really highly focused on that. And making improvements like little, bitty improvements every month because that, racks up over the year. So it has had a ripple effect on that kind of budget.
So Paul, while we have you here answering the question, I have to ask, what do you think are the biggest opportunities right now?
Again, biggest opportunities for me really lie in LinkedIn compared to, let's say, Facebook. I mean, I love your idea of piggybacking on top of top-rated content on Facebook. I think it's a fantastic idea, something I'd love to try out. But, for me, I've been putting a lot of my dollars into trying to fine-tune and push the boundaries of how I'm targeting on LinkedIn so I get the most out of that spend, which, as I mentioned, is a little bit, let's say, more expensive than Facebook, but highly targeted, right? So the individuals that are in a sort of work mode and looking at their profiles or whatever, or looking at other people's profiles and hitting them where they live.
So Sean, are you seeing similar things where you guys are having good luck with LinkedIn, or are there other networks that you're tapping into?
We do a little with LinkedIn. We don't have as many B2B focused clients. We're a little bit more consumer heavy. So for instance, Pinterest is a place we've found some really exciting opportunities in terms of promoted pins, plus adding that onto some of the boards we're doing, like JetBlue we work with, and first airline to be on Pinterest. So we're excited about that, and makes a lot of sense for some of the products that they offer and experiences they offer. So that's a place we've done a lot with. Twitter is a place where, again, I think I'm really excited about the video aspects of the world. I think that's for me the real big opportunities in the future, and with Twitter doing a lot more with that, and Instagram offering video in the last year, and I just feel like Facebook's invested much more in that. I think TV got mentioned again, but there's a lot of great experience you can bring to the world with video, and obviously YouTube's a place where we've always done that on. But for me, that's kind of where we're at in terms of consumer-wise, is those platforms. And then we've kind of dipped our toe in the water a little bit with Snapchat just to try with a few clients to see if that's a place we need to be.
Yeah. So Andrew, are you seeing similar with your clients where they're going to like Snapchat and Instagram and the more visual platforms and maybe leaving some on Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, I see people are always trying things. Most of my clients, to be honest, are very Facebook-centered, and they'll do some things on Twitter and some things on LinkedIn, but mostly it's on Facebook. And I think, particularly to your question about what are the biggest opportunities in social, I think the biggest one that I've really seen is thinking about how social can replace the other channels that you may be investing in now, and maybe not replace, but maybe complement is a better word. So, for example, if you are an email marketer, you use email as a big part of your strategy, and you sequence people through email into telling them about why you're great, or getting them to read more of your content, or things like that, telling them your value proposition. Using website custom audiences, retargeting on Facebook, even for a very small publisher or somebody that's much bigger, can be really effective getting them to, okay, it can kind of replace email to some degree. It's say, okay, they came into this page, and then we're going to retarget people that came to that page with another piece of content. And then from those that read that piece of content, we're going to retarget them with another piece of content. Many of you may know John Loomer of John Loomer Digital, and he did an experiment about this that's on his blog that basically talks about kind of bringing people through this 8-step email funnel, but on Facebook, and it actually resulted in him for $25,000 in sales, which is pretty awesome. So, it just gives you an idea of the types of things that you can do in terms of big opportunities, and it's kind of reframing it. Like, here's my goals. I want to do these 5 things, and if we had to do them all on social, if we had to eliminate TV, if we had to eliminate print, what would we do, and how could we kind of attach that to what we can do on social? So that's what I really think is the big opportunity there, to use audiences and kind of replacing that and making them combine together for a really powerful impact.
Sean, you mentioned video earlier. How quickly do you think video will grow to become, a key type of content on these platforms?
Pretty fast. I mean, I think if you look at, all the platforms offering it, and how fast short-form video is being shared across the board, whether it's advertising focused or not, I think that's something we're seeing just a lot of. And I think, everyone knows the premises in terms of how fast technology is moving, in terms of everybody having a smartphone, everybody having a tablet, and then the increases in, we'll put net neutrality aside, all the opportunities you have with wireless and going beyond that, LTE now. And so I think just the bandwidth's there, everything's there, and I think video is such a great storyteller that it's just naturally a place where you're going to see a lot of it. And obviously people are uploading a ton of it, and they have the capability to record it themselves. So all those things coming together, I think you're already seeing it become a very big part of the mix, especially from an advertising perspective. I mean, obviously imagery has been a big driver in the last couple of years, and will continue to be so, because it's just so fast, so easy, and tells a great story. But I think really at the end of the day, video is super powerful. And I also think, to be brutally honest, you have the Facebooks and the Twitters world looking at $75 to $80 billion TV budgets and saying, we want a piece of that.
Do you think this is being driven by mobile and video becoming more accessible on mobile devices?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that's a huge part of it. If you look at, any statistics from Nielsen or Millward Brown or any of that, I mean, you can see, just how people are adding media time to their day just by, adding obviously mobile, kind of the in-between the cracks kind of moments are always on their phone, or their device, but also the idea of, second, third screening, during the evening when they're watching TV. So I think you just have a significant amount of increase in just video consumption on other devices. That's definitely driving a lot of that.
So, Paul, on a B2B standpoint, are you seeing mobile also playing a large role in your current strategy and impacting?
Oh, absolutely. We have launched 2 apps, one that's specific to regulations and such, and one that is just more general content themed by sector, by industry, right? And the numbers for those grow each month. I get a report from those apps, and it's kind of hard to tie some of that metric, through to some of our other metrics, but it's great to see a lot of the growth there. And people are just consuming, they're snacking on a lot of this content. Whether they're in line at Starbucks or on an elevator or whatever, they're consuming it. So we got to get it to them where they live.
So you touched on metrics. Have there been any changes in the KPIs you're using for social now compared to a year or 2 years ago? How have those evolved?
Yeah, so at the beginning of this year, I really asked the team to dispense with all reach metrics, right? So don't give me, clicks and views and what have you. With the 2 apps that I mentioned, multiple Twitter accounts, multiple Facebook pages, emails, the website, blah, 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 we could spend a whole month just to recap what happened last month, right, to put the fine point on these reach metrics from all of these channels. So, I asked them, only send me the engagement metrics, right? I want to know about downloads. I want to know about people who attended events, stuff that's really super tangible. And then, of course, they love a big number, and it's very hard for me to get them to move away from that. But, but let's also look at value metrics. Where have we actually, connected to pipeline? Where have we connected to wins? Actual engagement type metrics that have led to, revenue. So focusing them a little bit different for this year, and so far it's been going really well.
So Andrew, are you seeing a lot of these same top of the funnel engagement metrics as the primary KPIs that you're using and your clients are, or are you looking more at lower level funnel and final conversion metrics being tied back to social activity?
I think it really depends on the client I work with. I'm actually with Paul. I personally believe that the reach metrics and the kind of the top level engagement stuff can help tell part of the story to some people, but is not as valuable as a conversion, a sale, the revenue. I mean, we didn't have that early on, which was a big bother to a lot of us as social marketers, that we didn't have a way to say, hey, by the way, we really matter, and we do now. And we don't, not totally there. I mean, so it's being developed, but on Facebook specifically, if you're e-commerce, there's many more ways that you can track that with conversion pixels and things like that. So I am trying to tie as much as I can to that, and I think that's really, really important. I think the one thing that I'll do, though, is like an exercise with a lot of clients is I'll lay out, okay, what are initially, you get started, what are the 10 things that really matter to you? And let's see if some of these things that we can track can tie into that. So maybe they do want to know that they reached, 35,000 people, and that means a lot to them, and that's a big deal. And so we'll put that as kind of part of a dashboard for them that they can look at and just identify and say, this is interesting, this is different than, lining it up against other channels. So I really see a push, and I push personally to that. Clients ask me about bottom of the funnel, but I also think it's important to tell as much of a story as you possibly can.
Yeah, building on your point, Andrew, about initially not having those final conversion metrics, something that I've seen with the clients I'm working with, marketers are becoming a lot more savvy, where we have retailers who are now starting to put key page pixels on a lot of their pages in the funnel instead of just tracking final conversion. They're seeing where people are dropping off, but still having a lot of publishers where they are looking at those higher level engagement metrics and seeing who's talking on their post, and then what are their clicks back to site. With those, Sean, I would love to give your take on this to round the conversation out.
Yeah, I mean, the lazy answer, I hate to say it, but it's kind of a true answer, is that every client has different objectives, so we're using different metrics for different objectives, and that's just a reality. I think what we tend to see is, the clients who are, I guess, more at that top of the funnel, we're looking more for, we kind of call it energy, but it's the idea of more sharing of the content that we create than anything else, and we've kind of moved away from, did we get a like, did we get, how many people are following us, those types of things, because building those communities just haven't been as important. But some of our clients are very much into, they need to be driving business with their social channels as well. I think everybody is, but some are more focused on that and using those tools. But and in that case, it is looking at, are we actually able to get someone further down a funnel making a purchase or coming back to buy again? So, I hate to say that because I think that's a very broad kind of answer, but that's the reality that we have today.
So with
the thing, Jess, that I would say.
Oh, sorry. Go, Andrew.
Can I interrupt? I mean,
yes.
Dare we bring up dark social in this conversation? Dark social?
No.
The dark side of the force. No. Do you have yeah, Andrew, what do you want to say about it?
Well, I mean, I know that's like opening floodgates on this, but I do think personally, and I'm very biased, I want to be clear about this, but I believe that social is actually much more impactful than it gets credit for. And Facebook is coming out, last month they said they did a number of studies, and 90% of the people that converted and made a sale, or actually, bought, hadn't actually clicked on an ad. And we as direct marketers a lot of times have, we've defined that click as what we've had as our North Star, which I don't think is bad. But as part of the conversation, let's bring up what are we influencing people just on what they're seeing, and we know that they're taking action. We just may not be able to track it. So I don't know, maybe that's opening the floodgates, but it's an interesting point.
I think just to state that Facebook, and I think where they're going in terms of tracking on the internet, and kind of as the cookie goes away, one of the things they've looked at, and they've kind of stated openly, is replacing Nielsen, replacing other ComScore even, in terms of saying, we have single sign-on for most people across devices, and we can pretty much track humans and track people individually, and then match that up with a an axiom set of data or a data logic set of data, and as long as they're following the right rules, which to date looks like they have been, that's pretty powerful stuff in terms of being able to determine exactly what you're saying, I think. And it's just we're going to be able to see not just online what they're doing in that kind of digital sense, but be able to track generally or ideally what people are doing in the offline world too, as they traverse it with a mobile device.
Yeah, we see Twitter came out with cross-device attribution within their metrics this year too. So they can start seeing if you're being exposed to an ad on mobile. As a lot of consumers, mobile is eating up our engagement, or a lot of people are engaging on mobile, they're consuming content, but ultimate conversions are still happening on desktop. And it definitely is a gray space where if you show someone an ad 3 times, is it that third time that gets them to convert, or do they already have intent beforehand? It's definitely, there's that old saying, I know my marketing dollars are working, I know 50% of my marketing dollars are working, but which 50%? That kind of comes into play here. So my question, though, with all of these, with the bevy of metrics that are available, how are those influencing your optimization strategy for content? It's open to Sean, if you want to take that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. We get a lot of data almost near real time. So I think on one hand, we're taking that and trying to, get our content resource and creative resources to move as quickly as humanly possible. And that's one of the challenges we always have is, how fast can you create and adapt to the content. But generally, overall, you're getting data on a regular basis, and just like any part of the digital space, you're going to optimize it based on what you're learning. So, I would say overall, we're on a regular basis just, looking at what works and what doesn't work, and making new recommendations on what to do moving forward.
You mentioned real-time data. Paul, do you think that historical data is still valuable in influencing strategy, or are we at that point in social's evolution where real-time data is what we should be looking at?
Well, I mean, I can speak for my team. I know we're looking at real-time or near real-time, right? I mean, real-time is really difficult to be living in that particular moment. But, we're optimizing based on what's happening within a given couple of days. How is this drawing? Do we need to put some more dollars behind it if it's not getting the response that we want? And then, measuring that across other channels. So is that working was it working in email? How is it working on the app? So we've got interesting challenges, but we're really looking at what's happening right now, because we've also got to get on to the next piece, right? I hate to say it, but we're content heavy, and we're publishers, right? In that sense, Andrew, and that's kind of what we're looking at.
So we still see content that does go viral, breaking news, a really good cat video, or such. Andrew, I'd love to hear your take on how do you think those impact your strategy?
Well, everybody wants everything to go viral. That's the goal. I think chasing that is, not really shouldn't be anybody's strategy, and that's a really bad idea. I think it's all about playing the long game and making sure that you're talking to people over time and developing relationship. There is still stuff that hits with certain people, but in terms of the strategies that I build out with clients, viral is just not part of the equation. It's providing value is the number one thing. Right away, why is this valuable? How is it, how do we know it's valuable to people? And then as the next one, if it does well, great. If it does go quote unquote viral, then fantastic. But we don't really have that as part of our strategies.
That term viral, it just reminds me of a couple of years ago where it was you couldn't get into a meeting where it wasn't hey, we need a viral video at the outset of every meeting. So at least that's kind of calmed down. I think people have sort of realized, hey, let's focus on quality over just wanting quantity and having things go viral. So it's an interesting shift.
Great. Well,
I agree. I think Facebook has made that.
Oh, sorry.
That purposefully.
So we're actually coming short on time. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for their fantastic input. And I'm going to pass it back to Steve for a Q&A session.
Thanks, everyone. That was a great panel, and we definitely have some interesting questions from the audience, so let's go right to them. Okay, so the first question is from John. A lot of B2C are smaller companies and many startups that at first need to focus on local levels. Yet you keep talking about budget, how much it will cost, etc. What do you do for smaller companies? Do you have any specific programs for smaller companies?
I can take this. I can answer a little bit of this. I would say of the three panelists here, I probably work with the smallest people. I think at a very low level in terms of social strategy, even if you are not a business that you feel like Facebook and Twitter fit into kind of the DNA of who you are, signing up and putting a retargeting pixel on your website from Facebook, the website custom audiences retargeting pixel, and on Twitter putting their retargeting pixel on as well, and using those as a channel to reach consumers. Even as a small business, being able to talk to people that have come to your website previously and saying, hey, thanks for visiting, here's a coupon, or hey, did you know that we also do this, or here's our latest reviews, or things like that is a really easy low-level strategy that, one, doesn't cost a lot of money, and two, is fairly easy to implement. And so that's one of the initial ones that I do with some of the smaller companies.
Would anyone else like to weigh in on that question? Okay. Next question from Gina. What types of advertised content have you discovered are best for B2B businesses?
I guess I can take that one. So, hey, it's Paul Dene. So thank you, Gina, for the question. So ad content for B2B, mostly it's, lists, top 10, something like that. Anything provocative, if you can talk about pitfalls or, different ways that you can achieve a certain result, I think that gets a lot of results. I think if somebody sees a number, if you sort of start your content with a number, so 5 ways to, not mess up a social media webinar, or something like this, that would be something that people would probably just want to dip into, see if they're doing those things or not doing those things. So the typical, and that also works for B2C, but it's a great B2B approach. Advertising that on LinkedIn, posting it out on Twitter, putting it out on your Facebook page and seeing the response, getting people to drive back to your site, using those as outposts to drive back to the site, pick up the content where you can potentially get a conversion. All of that is great.
Hey, Steve, this
Okay.
is Jeff. I know I'm not in the panel, but I have to insert here because it was a B2B question.
Go for it.
One of the things, I totally agree with what Paul said, and one of the things that I think as consumers of content, especially in the B2B space, that we're looking for now is really in-depth how-to, right? High-level topics. I can't tell you how many things I've read the first page and been like, okay, are you going to tell me anything that's important versus something I already know? And because social is such a large channel and because it is really focused on content and consumption, I think it comes down to value. And that word quality content or the phrase gets thrown around a lot. But I think the key to that is leaving somebody with something actionable that they can do to impact their plan, not just give them a concept. Literally leave them with, a piece of paper that says, okay, these are 3 things I'm going to do today because I read this content, not like those are 3 things that I should ponder. So just from my perspective, I've found that actionable is really, really great at getting results.
Okay. Next question is from Walt. When you talk about content quality, are you referring to post content or ad content or both?
I guess I can jump into that one. It's both. I mean, that's kind of how we look at it in terms of you have to be able to post great content, and often that is your ad. I think a lot of times, and that's the way kind of Facebook's built it. And regardless of what you're doing in this space, it's the nature of the platform to look for high quality content in both angles. So I think it's for me, it's both.
I also agree that it's both. I think one of the things that a lot of people have felt on social advertising specifically around content is that they they'll say, oh, we're just going to put up an ad, and it's very direct response focused, and it's very, the advertising language is really hard. When actually, I find that if you write ads like you would a post to your friends, or it's more natural, one, I believe, and I have some data to prove it, but Facebook serves that a little bit better, even in an ad algorithm standpoint. And it also gets better results because people are curious and they kind of want to go in and find out more. So I totally agree with that.
Next question is from Kate. How would you recommend convincing old school management that there's value in spending money on social? My current budget for social is $0, and I can't seem to convince those who hold the purse strings that investing in social is not only valuable but necessary.
I can kind of jump in on that and just say what works for us really well is just showing, if you're going to be old school in terms of advertising and management, then go old school with your approach and just show them the size and the reach and the power of these platforms. Like I said earlier, if you look at Facebook's numbers compared to television, we're reaching 75% of the U.S. adult population and then some. And so if you want to add that with, Twitter and LinkedIn and everything else, you're going to have as big a reach and media time spent than you're going to find anywhere else. So you're basically saying, if you want to go the old school route, you're going with a decaying medium that has less and less of proportion of time people are spending. So if you just want to get in front of people, you have to be in these places, and you have to, at the very least, get a testing budget to get out there and try it out. Otherwise, you're really missing out. Facebook told us recently, they came in and said that 1 out of 5 minutes on mobile is spent on some type of Facebook app, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or WhatsApp. So that's pretty powerful stuff, and I think if you just put it in numbers and say, hey, at the very least, you're going to need to want to test this just based on just eyeballs and those types of things, I think that's a good starting point. And then you kind of evolve into talking about some of the metrics we talked about earlier, which is like engagement and those types of things and how they can lead to business.
So I got a different take on that one, Sean. I can take it from a different angle for Kate. And so before I joined PwC, I was with another tech firm, and one of the things we did was to look on Twitter, to look up our company name on Twitter. It was a unique company name, and I'll spare we'll keep this anonymous. And it didn't take but a minute or two to find something where someone was, let's say, not talking all that favorably about the company on Twitter, and I promptly printed that out and walked that into this executive's office, so the executive you might be talking about, Kate, and showed that to this person, and he said, well, where did you find this? I said, Twitter, and of course he gave me the answer no social marketer wants to hear, which is, what's Twitter? And so after a little education on what Twitter is and, what we might need to do about it, he got religion about, making sure that we're answering and responding to people out there in the Twitter sphere. So, it's a little bit of a customer service-y angle. It's a little bit of a slippery slope, but if you want to get them involved pretty quickly, nothing beats a crisis, to get them involved in social.
Great. Next question is from Jennifer. What are the new social networks that we should be paying more attention to?
No one wants to take that. I've mentioned Snapchat a few times. It depends on your audience. Obviously, if you're looking at a younger audience, that's one. I don't know if you've explored Vine at all. With Twitter adding more video, I think it's kind of an interesting place. I don't know if it's really that new, but it's a place that we've kind of explored some more, and it really depends on what you're looking for. And then, again, depending on your audience, I think if you have a younger audience, that's where a lot of the newer platforms are really happening. A lot of them are chat-based, so I think a lot of the advertising and marketing opportunities are a little bit limited, but for me, that's where we've been looking. But more of your, if it's B2C, more your mature audiences, I think you're still going to find them mainly on Facebook with Twitter and Instagram and, I guess to some degree LinkedIn, depending on who you are and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I agree with that, Sean.
Robert asks, do you think Twitter or other social networks will build their own algorithm just like Facebook?
You mean
optimizing? Actually, Twitter has signaled that they are going to do it. Yeah, Twitter has signaled that they are actually going to do that, that they'll be putting things algorithmically and kind of showing them differently depending on weight. We don't know when that's going to come, but it is going to happen.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say it makes sense, right? I mean, you know, Facebook's doing it. It's obviously working out for them. You know, Twitter's a public company now. Makes perfect sense.
Given the amount of content you saw it in Jeff's presentation earlier, it's getting harder and harder just to have the kind of waterfall approach.
From Natalia. Hello, everyone. Do you use Tumblr for your businesses? As a small fashion startup, we would better create and treat our own blog. Would we be better off to create and treat our own blog? Do you have some experience with such platforms? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump on that a little bit. We have used it, and it's great for certain audiences. I think that particular industry you're in is one I think you would benefit from using Tumblr and actually being, you know, I think the real difference is you wouldn't truly own the platform, as you said, and you may not have the same, I don't know, SEO opportunities as you might if you kind of owned your own blog and pulled it under your site or whatnot. But the existing community that comes with Tumblr can be very influential and very engaging, especially in certain areas. And I think, you know, certain areas like design and fashion, and those are places where it does very well. And it's, you know, the fastest growing platform of the big ones in the last year or so. I think Yahoo's done a lot to continue to leave it be in some ways, but also invest in it so it can grow.
Our final question from Joseph. How much advertising budget do you need to be effective in social advertising?
I think it really depends on your goals. I think it depends on what your objective is. Is your objective to get 100 leads? Then you're going to need more of a budget. Is your objective to raise awareness of your business and begin to engage with current customers? Then maybe it's going to you know, be a little bit less, but maybe it's still going to be significant. It depends on what you want to do and what you consider success. So you know, there's really not a minimum level, in my opinion, and I think that that's important for people to know, that it's not some threshold. You can do even, you know, $500 little buys and see what that does for you and see where that goes as a small business owner, just as long as you set the expectations between you and your business.
Yeah, I just jump in and say I agree with that. Testing is the way to go. You got to test, and it's like Google. You got to test and, you know, search. You got to find your number and what you're doing and what you need to do, and it just starts by starting small and building from there and finding that, you know, kind of point of diminishing return after it.
Right, and I would just pile onto that with, you know, phase it in, right? So start small and then build up. So, you know, I don't know whether it's 500 or 5,000, depends on your budget. It's sort of the it depends answer, but, you know, just test and continue to raise your dollar amounts and see how it goes.
And another question just snuck in. We have another minute, so I will ask it, and it's from Bethany. Is Reddit a good platform to use for any kind of marketing or conversation starting?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. We actually have used it, and with some success. I will just say that the Reddit community is a unique community. It's a great community, but it's also highly critical of or can be highly critical of advertising. I just think that if you're going to go there, be really smart, be really transparent, be really authentic, and have something to say that particular community is going to want. Otherwise, it could pretty much backfire you from a PR kind of an advocacy kind of perspective. It could create a lot of detractors, and if you do it wrong. But I think if you do it right, we've done a lot with Q&As and those types of things, and it can be really successful and really start a fire, so to speak, with that kind of early advocate and early influencer.
And with that, we are out of time. So I would like to again thank our speakers, Jess Barr from Social Flow, Sean Corcoran from Mullen, Paul Dene from PwC, Andrew Foxwell from Foxwell Digital, Andrew's dog as well, and Jeff Soriano from Social Flow. And of course, thank you to everyone who participated. We hope you found it worthwhile. It has been recorded. You'll have access to that recording afterward. We'll send out an email to give you a link to that, and we hope to see you again. Have a good day.